This week's podcast is brought to you by Avast, a global leader in digital security and family safety solutions for network operators and their customers. Consumers are more connected than ever. Over 66% of North American households now have at least one Internet of Things device. But whether they're using a doorbell camera, online fridge, voice-activated assistant, or even just a mobile phone and laptop, each device further exposes them to attacks on their digital security and privacy. Avast's advanced AI-driven security can be deployed at the device, router, or 5G network level to provide a comprehensive and fully converged solution powered by the world's largest consumer threat detection network. Their award-winning security solutions make it easy for consumers to manage their digital life security using just one simple interface, no matter how many devices they use. That's smart. Let Avast help you build a safer digital home for your customers. Discover more at avast.com/partners. That's avast.com/partners. Welcome to the Light Reading Podcast. I'm Phil Harvey, and I'm an editor here at Light Reading, and today I'm joined by Todd Grantham, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Plume. And this is a follow-up podcast. Todd and I talked about a month ago. We discussed what traffic patterns were changing now that everybody is working from home during the COVID-19 pandemic, and how that data varied from city to city. This time around, we're going to talk about what's changing now that some cities are slowly starting to open up and people are going back to work and some restaurants are opening. It's not a complete opening of the economy, I guess, but there is enough of a ripple in the traffic patterns, and he's noticed some differences, and he also makes some predictions about what we might see next. So we'll talk about work from home traffic, what's changing and what's not, right after this break. Todd Grantham, CMO of Plume. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me back.
I am glad to follow up with you on the conversation we had on a previous podcast, because we were talking about how the work from home life has changed for everyone in the COVID-19 pandemic. And this particular conversation will be relevant, especially to me, because we're recording this, pull back the curtain a bit. We're recording this on May 1st. This is the day that the stay-at-home order in Texas has expired, the statewide order. And restaurants and theaters and other places are starting to open up at 25%. Now, I'm not going to get into all what I think should happen or anything like that. Suffice to say, I'm staying home all weekend. But what I am going to ask you about is obviously Texas and Georgia and some other states have already started to slowly open back up. And I'm wondering, has any of that activity in the physical world started to show up in the traffic patterns that Plume has been tracking on its website?
Yeah. Thanks for calling back. I mean, this is kind of the time that we've been waiting for. Obviously we started tracking this data back, all the way back before COVID really kind of impacted, and then saw the upticks happening in mid-March, of course, when the national emergency was declared. And as you say, the stay-at-home orders really kind of kicked in, and we could see that manifesting. And we wanted to keep tracking this data to see exactly, as you're wondering, did it start to soften? And I think the real downturns, or if you will, or if the reductions in daily usage haven't really shown itself yet. I expect that over the next week or two, as you say, especially some of the states lessen their orders. We're not in that situation here in the Bay Area where I'm located. Our 6 counties are still shelter in place through May, but other cities, I think we will start to see that data show itself. It is true also that we are seeing some softening. There's certainly, in particular to some of the Texas states, some of the cities that we're tracking in Texas are softening a bit from their high points, but I wouldn't say it's been a wholesale change just yet. They were always the Texas cities that we're tracking. They were always a little bit softer than some of the other cities, but and they have softened a little bit more. But for the most part, I think people are still respecting kind of the general tendency that they should be working mostly from home. I'm fascinated to see what happens come mid-May,
Yeah.
or certainly mid-June. I think we're really going to start to see the impacts then, I think.
Yeah, I definitely want to follow up again in June and sort of see where things have evolved at that point, because then a lot more people will be, again, barring a second, wave of the virus or something like that, seems like a lot more things will open up. Interesting to note too that some of my colleagues have been reporting that network traffic has plateaued from the point of view of some service providers. So we had the initial spike as everyone, I guess, was, um, you know, initially setting up home offices and starting to do school at home and starting to work from home and, kind of conduct all their activities online. And then it plateaued. So I guess that was, I'm guessing the plateau was more about just a general leveling off of people finding their work rhythm and their school rhythm. And what you're saying is those rhythms are still sort of happening, and in some cases there's been a little bit less traffic, but not enough to really be that remarkable yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think it's kind of always resetting itself as what is the new normal. But computer usage. I think when we spoke, computers usage was well up, was over 100% up during the daytime hours. It continued to ramp after that time that we spoke. It ended up spiking almost at 200% in that Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it was significantly up ultimately. But then it has really settled in there the last most of April, settled in right around that mark. We are starting to see it tail just slightly. I think entertainment as well. I mean, I'm now just editorializing here, but my hunch is that people were very, very seriously taking this in early parts of April, and their usage suggested that. And I think also there was probably an intensity, but this new way that we were all working, this new conditions that we were working under, I think people were really taking it seriously and going heavy on
Yeah, yeah,
on being there. And I think people have started to find their rhythm. They found ways to be efficient. They've maybe realized, okay, I can get this much done, and then I can kind of go do some other things. I don't have to be 100% glued. Again, the number hasn't changed radically. So where in the computer use example, it was in the 100, we were seeing somewhere between 195 and 198% over where it was pre-COVID. It's, this last week was at 177%. So
mhm.
again, not radically down, but definitely maybe settling in.
Yeah,
We had a similar kind of drift downwards in smartphones and even in entertainment devices, which I found kind of interesting. It was at one point had kind of stabilized around the 95 to 100% increase during the work day, which again makes sense. Kids are at home, or maybe people aren't able to do work from home. But this last week, it's been more around the 82% mark. So again, maybe
Hmm.
people are like, okay, I've watched enough Netflix. Maybe it's time to go for a walk, or they're feeling safer getting out of the house to do, run to the grocery store or do some things like that. We don't really know, but there's definitely a settling in that's happening. It's not only plateaued. I think it's actually, it's settling, if you will.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because back when we talked, the computer usage Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., at that point had only increased. I mean, it was still up, way up, but it had only increased 115 or so percent. That's
Yeah,
what I had in my notes. So it continued to ramp long after that. On the entertainment device side, I have in my notes that entertainment at that same time frame, around the same, around the time we talked, was up more than 50%, and you're saying it's now in the 80s or up
that's right.
80%. and
Yeah,
and
that's
this
right.
is compared to pre-COVID levels, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, yeah. We went
Okay.
back and took kind of data over the month of January, and kind of used that as the quote unquote normal baseline. And so this
Yeah.
is all increases relative to that time. And so, yeah, I do think since that time we talked, more kids having to, stay at home, more, having to rely more and more on these devices. So yeah, that's true. It did continue to ramp after we talked, but then it settled in. I guess, our trend line started showing it settling in right around the first week of April or so. That's when it kind of started to flatten out, or first or second week of April. So last 2 or 3 weeks here.
I have a question about PC usage. So that was, it stands to reason that it's up, during the daytime. One of the more surprising things you pointed out previously was that it was also way up Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 or 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. At the time, we had kind of guessed that probably households with kids, school age children especially, were waiting, maybe batching the work together and doing some office work in the late evenings, answering emails and things like that when everybody was quiet and had gone to sleep. Has that pattern changed any now that folks are kind of, kind of had time to settle into a rhythm?
Well, it hasn't. I mean, it's increased, I would say, which is maybe the sad thing. It means even the work is continuing to be done kind of in off hours, if you will. So we're up in the
Uh-huh.
mid 60s, 60% range now for that computer use in those 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. hours. So that shows that sure, it certainly has not gone down. If anything, it's ever so slightly continued to drift up. Um, and but similarly, entertainment has continued to drift up. So I think people
Huh.
are genuinely kind of spending their time in the evening. So where the daytime has softened ever so slightly, the after hours in both computers and entertainment have both drifted up. So entertainment devices are now up in the 50% range, 50% increase range, which is, I think, higher than when we last spoke. So,
Yeah.
people are
Yeah,
definitely
it
doing
is.
that. No, I think we could also look at it, not to point out the obvious, but I think, spring and early summer has started to come on. Certainly the Bay Area has started to get some nice weather. I
Yeah.
have some friends in Denver that have finally had some nice weather. And so I think part of it during the day, people are maybe using the opportunity to get outside, knowing full well that, okay, I can't really go out at night, so I'm going to be working tonight, or I can watch stuff out. So I do wonder if some of the seasonality is driving the cabin fever during the day, and they're making up for it in the evening.
Oh, it's an excellent point. And I mean, the weather here, and I've done this, as much as anybody. If I can borrow a few minutes during the day, I'll take the odd conference call where I know I'm just going to be mostly listening. I'll take that while I'm walking around the block in the afternoon, especially on a sunny afternoon.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people are also kind of, and this is the great thing about working from home. I've done it for more than 20 years. A lot of people are just getting used to this, but you do find that even though you're sort of on call during the workday, you're not actually present and accounted for as much as you would think. And so you can certainly, like you said, move answering some emails to later in the evening, take care of some things you need to take care of at home, or hey, go out and prune the roses in the garden for a little
yeah,
bit and
yeah.
keep your cell phone with you.
Yeah, that's
uh,
exactly right. I mean, I think even the same, there's some folks that work with us that they have younger kids, and it's
yeah,
harder, without daycare and things like that, it's harder for them to entertain them during the day. So even if you can get
yeah,
them out and have them burn off some energy outside, knowing full well that you'll have to catch up in the evening, I think that's right. I think flexibility ultimately is what we're seeing, and is ultimately the name of the game when you're working from home. It's like, okay, I know that I can be on all the times. I need to find the times that work for me, considering I still have things I have to do in my life as well. So that's I think maybe what the trend lines are showing us is that early day was those early days. Everyone was just rushing to say, okay, I need to just be sitting in front of my machine. That's what work is. And now I think maybe they're
right.
finding it can be blurred in terms of the time and blurred in terms of the location, even. So I think that's right.
Yeah, I hate to be a Pollyanna about it, but I do hope this helps people find creative solutions to hiring, hiring, the structuring their workday and so on and so forth. Maybe a little bit more in favor of uh, the 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 always present work life balance that especially people in the Bay Area talk about.
Yeah, I think employers are turning onto it too. I don't remember if we talked about it the last time, but we've got a program that we're running here at Plume where we're going to employers and saying, listen, if you've moved a lot of your workforce, obviously a lot of your workforce is now working from home, and for them to be productive, they need strong home Wi-Fi solutions. We're doing a program with them where we'll give, through the employer, we'll give them a multi-year program for the price of 1 year that they can offer to their employees. And a lot of
Huh.
the big companies are taking us up on that because they're investigating very seriously kind of a permanent shift. And instead of necessarily having people come back to the locations, I know there's a lot of talk out there about companies doing that. But even in our conversations with big companies promoting this program, 3 years of Plume services for the price of one, they're saying we want to offer that to all of our employees because frankly we're trying to move a lot of our workforce, maybe to stay this way. This isn't a temporary
Yeah.
thing. And so I think you're right. I think not only are employees finding benefits or ways to work this way, I think employers are realizing it's working for them as well.
Yeah, there's especially in areas. I mean, I can kind of go back to the Bay Area because I used to live there 20 years ago, but even then I was priced out of the housing market. Um,
Yeah.
and that certainly hasn't changed. The interesting thing about places like the Bay Area is that, when you find something, teams of people that can work from home, it's like, boy, if you can cut down on that office real estate in the center of the city, that's a huge incentive for an employer to maybe rethink the way they're doing things.
Yeah.
So I have another question about the media and
Sure.
entertainment usage, real
Sure.
quick. Um, we still don't have live sports. That's still in the offing. We did have the NFL draft, but people are, live sports is still seems to be some ways away. Um, is it is it odd that the data, for streaming media and entertainment doesn't seem to be the data usage for those devices doesn't seem to be slowing down at all, even though we haven't had that what I would expect to be, a great catalyst in that direction, which would be, uh, we at this point, if things had been continuing before the COVID-19 pandemic, we would have had, XFL football, basketball playoffs, March Madness, all these um, uh, really premium sporting events leading us into the summer months. I just found it interesting. I guess I don't really have a question, but I just found it interesting that streaming around entertainment devices never really seemed to slow down despite the lack of compelling content.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I'm an auto racing fan myself, and it's interesting what the auto racing community has done, and a lot of these professional series and professional racers going to iRacing and actually having, racing is one of the few things where you could actually kind of almost have a
Yeah,
video game like almost mirror the real life thing. So it's a very different sport. But I think
yeah,
actually your point touches on something maybe pretty interesting in terms of the device usage. So our entertainment category tracks set-top boxes such as Roku's or Fire Sticks. It tracks gaming consoles, and it also tracks TVs, smart TVs, but only tracks the data those smart TVs are pulling via directly connecting to the internet. So in other words, if they were using
okay,
it to stream any of their regular cable or whatever, that wouldn't show up. So what is interesting is our entertainment device usage is showing steady increases. And to your point, maybe, and we haven't looked at this data, and we don't look at what people are streaming, only which device they're using,
right, right,
and so it's possible we would have seen some kind of dip, if live sports had been more of a thing right now, and
hmm
maybe this that would have pulled away from some of the traffic, but because that venue wasn't there, those connected smart TVs and everything else is actually getting more of the usage because there just isn't other options. So that might even be part of the explanation, where they historically would have maybe popped on, a football game or a baseball game or or basketball playoffs or any of those kinds of things.
yeah,
Now it's the other stuff.
yeah.
So
It's
that
definitely
so it
Netflix and stuff like that. We saw that in their earnings recently that they
yeah.
had quite, things that just continue to ramp up for them in terms of number of users, number of hours, all of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's right. So again, the question, I'm certainly not a prognosticator around the future of, of sports, but certainly this has certainly opened up a lot of other content channels that people are enjoying getting used to. I think, and I think like the racing example, I think some sports are even finding ways to adapt in this time. And
Hmm.
the question is, how will others do that, and then what are the access methods for people to get that content?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, we're about out of time, but was there
Sure.
anything else in the most recent data that stood out to you that you wanted to pass along, or any other big changes in traffic that you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this, and we hope to be releasing this data kind of publicly next week. But we have been watching the network speeds, the speeds that the ISPs provide, and those are looking pretty stable. There's been actually some increases even in terms of them dialing up the WIC, if you will, over the last
Uh-huh.
2 months. We've been watching that, and then the noise inside of the house has really, really exploded. We're seeing as these, kind of a reflection, if you will, the backside reflection of this data that we've got available now in terms of what use is, we can actually see all of the Wi-Fi noise that's happening inside of a home, and what's causing it. And how many channel optimizations we have to do, and band optimizations we have to do, and the congestion and load that's happening inside of a home. And we're seeing, across all of those things, the optimization, the load, and the congestion, we're seeing 300+% increases. So there is no
Huh.
question. It's just a validation or a reconfirmation that these data that we're seeing on the front side in terms of usage is showing how complicated and disrupted the Wi-Fi environment is. So we're always working hard to make certain that the devices have the best possible experience, and thankfully, all our data is showing that has also remained flawless. But there's no doubt the noise inside the home is cranked up right now for sure.
Yeah, yeah, lots of different devices broadcasting radio signals and looking for connections and trying not to get in each other's way, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So our software, which is kind of continuously optimizing how those devices perform, is constantly looking for best ways to navigate that, because it's crowded and congestion out there right now.
Oh yeah, and if you are if any consumer happens to be listening to this and you're on the fence about buying a smart router or something like that, definitely get one. Definitely get one where the software manages the process for you. The old school way of just picking a channel and or settling on your ISP's default channel will make you a sad participant in the internet experience. It's
Yes.
really nice when all that stuff is happening in the background and you're completely not aware of it and your Wi-Fi just works.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, we call ours adaptive Wi-Fi, because the reality is none of these things stay static. I mean, not only,
Right.
I mean, we weren't anticipating pandemics and suddenly that creating massive disruption, but people add new devices and neighbors move in with their broadcasting Wi-Fi and it interferes with you. So adaptive Wi-Fi is the only way to go, managed by software. It's totally right.
All right, Todd Grantham, thanks so much for joining us on the Light Reading Podcast, and we will catch up in a few weeks.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, Phil.
I want to thank Avast for sponsoring this week's podcast. Avast's award-winning security solutions make it easy for your customers to stay safe online using just one simple interface, no matter how many devices they use, wherever they go, and however they connect. Let Avast help you build a safer digital world for your customers. Learn more at avast.com/partners. That's avast.com/partners. That is it. That's our show. Thanks so much to Todd Grantham, CMO at Plume, for his time and insights. Thanks to our producer, Tian Fu, for making us sound good, even when we don't. Thanks to you, dear listener, because if you weren't paying attention, we wouldn't be able to get away with doing all of this at work or at home, wherever we might be. Please do tell a friend to subscribe, and thanks very much for listening to the Light Reading Podcast.